my son, who's 2, he is very strong-willed. He's like me. We're both pretty stubborn, and we both have tempers. So we kind of, butt heads a lot, like my father and I did, which is very challenging for me because I just want to explode. Like that's it's a pattern, my whole childhood is like my dad would yell at me when he'd get upset, and then I'd yell back, and it was just this horrible cycle. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to break out of it, and it's driving me a little crazy because my son will just have an outburst. Like you tell him not to do something, and he'll just keep going at it, at it, at it, and you're like, please stop, please stop. And I do get to points where I yell because I don't even know what to do anymore because I can't restrain him. He'll just keep going. Um, I don't even know what to do with him at that point. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I know it's gonna come if I tell him to stop doing something, but I'm not sure where to redirect him because he's just like laser focused on doing that thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Can I
go
jump
ahead.
in?
Yeah.
So if you're so you see it coming, and thank you for explaining that, and thank you for explaining the generational pattern. That's the drama triangle, right? You're like, oh, I felt that, and now the similar things gonna happen. I don't want that pattern to happen. So when you start to see it coming, he's doing something, and you're telling him not to do it, like right there in that moment. And again, this is for all of us. What could you do to be way more proactive? Because at that point, it's starting to be reactive. So you all, every one of us, let's just ask, like, okay, when I see it coming, what can I do to be more proactive? Because obviously, telling him not to do something, it's not working, is it? Because he's like, forget you, and you're like, I told you don't do it, and he's like, I told you I'm gonna do it. So
now it's a battle of the wills.
It doesn't work. It never turns out. Those never end well. So right there in that moment, that's where we as striving to be better parents, we have to like stop and say, well, okay, I'm not going to be reactive. I've got to be way more proactive. What can I do? Because what I'm doing is not working. What can I do differently to shift the whole thing?
Can I add a comment here?
Wait for it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Part of my overall parenting approach is I try to say no as little as possible. And I know that might sound crazy, especially with a 2-year-old, but I always look for the ways to say yes. And sometimes that means saying yes to what I want them to do and distracting them from what I don't want them to do. So it takes creativity because you're like, oh, they're going to want that thing. Maybe dad runs over or you run over and hide it. And then you're like, hey, look at this. Let's play with this thing. So you never have to say no. If no's causing the problem, avoid saying no. Like just as much as you can. If you know they're going to resist the no, then just try not to say it at all. Come up with other ways to redirect to something else that you can say yes to. Even now, like I save my no's for when they really matter.
Which
I try to say yes as much as possible.
So rare. I would be bold enough here to say every one of us should adopt that as a philosophy. Say no as rarely as humanly possible while you're raising your kids.
Now, sometimes my yes comes with conditions. If my children say, I buy kombucha because I like kombucha and they all want to have one, they say, can I have a kombucha? And I say, yes, if you clean up the kitchen. Instead of saying, no, you can't have one, they're for me. I'm like, yeah, I'll give you a kombucha if you clean up the kitchen. Can I have a keto popsicle? We buy keto popsicle. Yes, as soon as you vacuum the floor. So I'm coming up with ways to say yes as much as possible. And then when I say no, they know I really mean it because I'm like, no, that thing, no. But when they're young, especially when they're learning about these boundaries, they're going to push the boundaries. That's part of their job. They want to push those boundaries. So when you say no, they want to push that. That's just the natural stage they're in.
Toddlers and teens.
Expect that. Yeah.
Toddlers and teens, man. You say no, they're going to do it.
They're pushing it.
So it's just constant redirect. Just become, I love the phrase, obstinate creativity. Like you just become obstinate in your creativity of ways to redirect. So you start seeing, if he's doing something annoying, maybe he's teasing your baby or teasing you, or he's laying on the ground kicking the door. Caw, 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 caw. If you kick that door one more time, right? That doesn't work.
So instead you go like this.
Look at this. Look at this. No,
oh my gosh. What? No, we really do that at our house. If we have a little kid, we'll do whatever it takes to get their attention and then be like, oh my gosh, come look at this. It's amazing. It's a bug.
And they're like, where, what is it? And you're like, oh, wait, look, there at the door.
Getting all excited.
We just use distraction, and it's actually really works really well. And it works for us as adults too. When you're like, you find yourself mentally going into the spiraling out of control, like, whoa, what am I doing here? Like, no, let's focus on this over here.
What you want to focus on instead. And that solves, the majority of the time, that solves this negative problem just by refocusing on what you actually want. You're refocusing your attention on what you actually want, which is fun, good feelings, happiness. Yes. So you focus on that and it avoids the negative.
Oh, good. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think so. He still is challenging though, because he's crafty.
Good. You want that.
Yeah, I do, but so he'll like to push the buttons when I'm sitting down to breastfeed my other son, and he's free to roam around. So he'll like open the fridge, take things out. And all that sort of stuff.
He's trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
He's craving for attention. He's like, oh man, mom's breastfeeding.
Well,
I want attention.
Or just taking advantage and he's wanting to get a reaction because you've reacted.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh, I know how this works. Mom sits down, she can't get to me, and she reacts when I do this stuff. So starting out, I would just not react. Maybe that's one thing, is just be like, oh,
you're like, you can't push my buttons because I don't have buttons. You pulled all the food out of the
fridge and made a mess. Okay. That is another tool I use. I honestly will not react to the behavior, because the more energy, focus, and attention you give a behavior, even if it's negative attention, that still reinforces it. So if there's something I don't want my kids to do, I ignore it until later when I can do something about it. I will talk to them about it. But in the moment, especially if there's nothing I can do about it, like especially in the car, this is the time I think of. If my kids are fighting in the back seat of the car while we're driving, there's nothing I can do about it. So generally I just ignore it. So ignoring the behavior is one of the first steps to fixing it, because the more you react to it, the more they're going to want to do it, because it's getting a response. And that's interesting and fascinating.
Yeah. So he does. So we live in a two-bedroom apartment on the second floor, and he knows how to get our attention by stomping on the ground as hard as he can and screaming.
It's a reaction.
And it does get a reaction. And I don't know what to do because the people downstairs are there most of the time. So the part of me that wants to be conscientious and not bother people is like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is the worst thing possible. So I have to try to stop him from doing that. So I don't know what I should do in that situation, because if I lived in a house, I would just let him do it, be like, go ahead, whatever. But I feel like I can't in this situation because I have gotten complaints about that.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And you do want to do something about that. In that case,
I would file a complaint about the complainers.
Oh gosh, no, stop.
Like, these people are unhappy people.
No,
just kidding.
You know, we all get that. We don't want people making lots of noise above us. In that case, I would, again, you're taking this behavior, and instead of getting upset about the negative behavior, I always like to use a smile when I'm getting after my kids. Oh, let's not do that. Let's tiptoe. Let's be very quiet. And you turn it into this game with a smile on your face. So they don't feel like they're in trouble, but suddenly now mom is playing this game. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, let's try this game.
And my approach would be different. I would grab them and be like, are you upset? You want to be mad? Let's beat your bed. Jump on your bed, pound your bed, hit the bed. And I'd take him and we'd wrestle on the bed and pound the mattress and jump and pound, just where it's quiet, right? And he can be a boy and be rough and smash. Well, you're pounding into a mattress instead of the floor, right? So again, we're just gamifying both things and redirecting.
Yeah, gamifying. I like that.